Hey guys, welcome back to the Glenscope channel, and I have a lot of updates for you. It's been a while since my last video, and I wanted to update you on what's going on with the Wii scandal that's going on. The Kielburgers just finished their 4-hour, well, I think it was almost 5 hours of answering questions by MPs. There was a lot of really great questions. I won't cover all of it, but it was very interesting. The main part I want to go into right now, Bill Blair just announced a public inquiry of the Nova Scotia shooting. Last week they announced it was going to be private only, but there was a large outcry saying, why is the public not being involved in this? Even the MPs of Nova Scotia were not in favor of a public inquiry, but there was such a large public outcry for this to change, for it to be a public inquiry. Like, why did this person get paid almost $500,000 just 2 months before he actually went on his rampage? Why did the RCMP knowingly let this man have illegal firearms that were apparently shown off? There's been some more additional unredacted information in regards to that. So that's been a major shift in policy. And it probably also has to do with that the Trudeau government is having major problems of their own with this Wii scandal. So they want something to possibly take a little bit of heat off the Prime Minister. And when I say heat, this is what I mean. The Angus Reid Institute just came out with a survey asking Canadians, what is your view on the handling of the Wii charity decision? And 80% of Canada either decided that this was an unethical decision, but not a criminal act. So, I guess our politicians are just unethical. Or a possible criminal act that should be investigated by police. That is a staggering amount of Canadians. And then 8% are not sure. Now, it's unclear if this was like they're not sure if it was an unethical or a criminal decision or if it was okay. So I guess they could have been followed up. So it might actually be higher than 80%. And it also turned out that moments ago, the Kielburgers had disclosed that Margaret Trudeau was not paid just $312,000. She was paid closer to $500,000, as she was paid an additional $167,000 in expenses. This is one of the primary arguments, saying that, oh, Margaret Trudeau should be, paid for her time and her expenses and all that stuff. Turns out she was paid for her expenses. Trudeau is under a significant amount of pressure, and with this public inquiry for the Nova Scotia shooter, it'll probably shine a little bit more light on some of the missteps from the RCMP. And that may sort of alleviate a little bit of pressure from Trudeau and the Liberal cabinet. Now, this article was actually just published by the Star just 2 days ago, and it sort of went a little bit unnoticed. And basically, Toronto has a major problem with gun violence, and it's only gotten worse under COVID and this lockdown. Like, nobody's traveling, but apparently the gun violence is just staggering right now. I just want to highlight a couple of key information points from this particular article. 6 months and a pandemic later, gun violence is thriving. Young people continue to be both victimized and accused of shooting up homes, neighborhoods to deadly effect. In Toronto this year, the shootings have injured nearly 100 people and killed 24, nearly half of those victims dying before their 30th birthday. Now, I just want to point out that the people actually doing the shooting, these aren't law-abiding. These aren't, responsible gun owners. They don't have gun licenses. These are, and when I say kids, I actually did a couple of videos on this. These are kids in gangs. And it's weird why they don't say these kids are in gangs, because they are. They're in gangs, and they're just basically going wild. And they're able to get all these firearms from the U.S. because they have a significant problem with smuggling. That sort of leads into my next point. So I did a video on Bill Blair last year where he did several interviews where he mentioned that the Liberal government was going to be submitting funding for all the provinces, and specifically Toronto, to try to sort of shore up the border. Like, they were paying money to get better border security, more guards. And the last videos that I have done have sort of shown the opposite. They're kind of defunding the border. But specifically, they earmarked almost $350 million for border security. But it seems in some cases, the promise for action remains unfulfilled. The first allotment of $250 million by federal funding specifically earmarked to fight gun violence by the Liberal government during the 2019 election, for instance, has still not been handed over. So where's the money? In January meeting, Mayor John Tory stressed that the federal money, $50 million a year for 5 years, is needed now. It's very clear to me they need to get a move on with that $50 million, said Irving Waller, a professor at the University of Ottawa. Although he noted the amount is peanuts in terms of what is needed. So they promise us money, it probably won't do anything anyway, but the Liberal government won't pay it anyway. So they have all these programs that they say that they're doing, but they won't even fund them. But Waller said that there are bigger reasons why efforts to curb gun violence, particularly law and order initiatives, haven't produced results. They weren't really initiatives that were likely to work. The evidence is very clear that police, courts, and prison system have only a limited effect on violence of all sorts, including gun violence. Marcel Wilson, a former gang member and co-founder of the One by One movement, a nonprofit that works to prevent at-risk people from joining gangs, said now is the time to think big. Nothing is too crazy to put on the table now except what we know hasn't worked. And we seem to be stuck in that cycle. And that sort of goes in line with what the peer-reviewed studies in Canada have said. And I just want to show you the peer-reviewed study. Effect on firearms legislation on suicide and homicide in Canada from 1981 to 2016. No associated reductions in homicide with increasing firearms regulations suggest alternative approaches are necessary to reduce homicide by firearm. This goes exactly with what Marcel is attempting to do. He started this nonprofit to help get kids and help get people out of gangs. And that only works by changing the mindset of these people. Okay, I just have a few more points this article makes that I think are really important. Gun violence in Toronto this year. So, gun violence is often a product of social ills, and that's where we see a concentration of social ills that are likely to produce conditions which violence emerges. Again, this has to do with the mindset of the person committing the crime. Even if you could remove the axe from an axe murderer, he would still be a murderer. You'd still have a problem with the guy's mindset. And to continue on, amid a spike in gun violence last year, Toronto Police Chief Mark Saunders said an ineffective bail system meant alleged criminals were all too frequently being released on firearms charges, only to refund. Police rearrested 53 people who were out on bail on firearms charges between August and September 2019 alone. That's 2 months. They let almost 60, that's one a day. They were arrested with an illegal firearm. They were back on the street. If they could get illegal firearms before, they could probably have one in their hands by the end of the day, right after being released. Okay, so here is where those monitoring bracelets come in. There was a January meeting that also raised the idea of making electronic monitoring bracelets, which help people on bail stay on track, more accessible. They're used infrequently because the accused have to foot the bill. Which is weird why in Canada we kind of feel like a second world country, because in the US they just like give them, right? I mean, if you break them, you'd have to buy them. But they don't have them available, and if you just don't want to pay, then you don't have to be monitored. This is a very weird country to live in. The idea that you can have an illegal firearm, get arrested for it, and along with possible other things that you may have been doing, and you have to pay for this bracelet. And if you don't want to pay, you don't have to wear one. What is this world? Saunders said in an interview Friday that bail compliance is still contributing to gun violence, but he expressed hope that the recent provincial initiative, which covers the cost of the bracelets, will make a difference. I think it could serve a critical role in reduction of gun violence, Saunders said. Bail compliance continues to be an issue in the York region too, and Media Relations Officer Sergeant Andy Pattenden in an email added that the changes the courts made as a result of COVID-19 have not helped the issue, saying there's been an increase in the number of people charged with violent offenses released on bail. Question to anyone in Ontario: did you know that violent offenders were being released, even ones with possible firearms related charges? Answer in the comments. Okay, guys, this article goes a little bit more in depth into like changes at the US border. Again, the Liberal government is actually reducing funding to the border. So if you thought there were a lot of crime guns right now in Canada, I don't see how less money could make it better. Gun control. So a couple of weeks after the Nova Scotia shooting in April killed 22 people, again, that particular gunman had all illegal weapons, and the police knew about it. Newly released, unredacted info that has just been obtained proves that the RCMP were aware and did nothing. That there were actual witness accounts saying, hey, RCMP, this guy has illegal firearms. I've seen them. And they actually took police reports on it. So maybe with this new public inquiry that the government was forced to actually do, will actually shed some light on this. I mean, the gun control is not going to stop the illegal firearms. And the further reductions in the border funding definitely won't help the issue. And the RCMP not responding to reports of illegal firearms is, there's so many problems with this particular system. And just some final thoughts on this article. There was a big spike in shootings in 2018 and last year in 2019. Police launched multi-million-dollar initiatives to fight it. They saw $4.5 million in funding from all three levels of government. Again, that's basically peanuts. Neither project resulted in year reduction in shootings. That's not surprising. Toronto Police said the 2019 initiative led to higher solve rates for shootings, but Saunders said on Friday he'd considered it excess in part because of the 240 guns seized. So they're seizing guns, which is good, but the violence is still going up. So can we really say it was a success? Critics say that these are band-aid solutions that don't address the causes of the crime and perpetuate the idea that policing is a solution to gun violence. A Star analysis in 2019 found when money is granted or approved by City Council, enforcement efforts have been heavily favored over community interventions, a trend that continues earlier this month when the Council rejected a motion asking Toronto Police to reduce its 2021 budget by 10% and instead fund community initiatives. So we seem to be going a little bit in the right direction, but the money that's been promised to actually sort of, for bracelets and that kind of stuff hasn't been delivered yet. There's been reductions in the border funding as well. People are being released on bail that have violent offenses and firearms offenses, if you didn't know that before. But overall, I mean, it just seems like this entire thing is just a giant dumpster fire. So with that, I'm just going to leave it at that. This video is long enough. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one, and hopefully a little bit sooner.